Okay, so good morning, class, and welcome to your financial accounting and reporting class. Now, so today we'll discuss about accounting cycle of a service business. So, what are some of our learning objectives? Number one, the end of the session, we should be able to prepare a worksheet, prepare closing entries, prepare a balance sheet and income statement of a service business, and prepare the corresponding reversing entries. So worksheet. So a worksheet is an analytical device used to facilitate the gathering of data for adjustments and preparation of financial statements and closing entries. So what are the columns that we can see in a worksheet? No? So first we have the column for accounts. So basically these are the accounts in the ledger that we're going to prepare. No? So the following columns, unadjusted trial balance. No? So these are the balances at the beginning. No? So the ending balances of the accounts in the general ledger are listed here. And then we have the columns for adjustments. You have your debit and credit here. The debits and credits of the adjusting entries are placed here. Now, so later on, we'll cover about some of the adjusting entries that we prepare. And then after getting those adjustment entries in, we can now come up with the adjusted trial balance. So the adjusted trial balance is computed by combining the amounts in the unadjusted trial balance plus any adjustments. And then the next columns are for your financial statements. So we have the income statement here. It The adjusted amounts of income and expense accounts are extended here, and your balance sheet. So basically your asset, liabilities, and equity. So for the unadjusted trial balance, what are the different types of accounts contained in the columns? No? So we have real, nominal, and mixed. No? So uh, let's step back here. No? So for unadjusted trial balance, as you know, we have real accounts, or those accounts that we can find from our balance sheet, or these are the books of permanent entries. And then we have nominal accounts, or the temporary accounts, which are found in your income statement. No? So adjusted trial balance. So again, it's these are real and nominal accounts. For income statement, like I said earlier, only nominal accounts or the temporary accounts. Balance sheets, only real accounts or your permanent accounts. And then finally, for your post-closing trial balance, so we have the real accounts only. And obviously, every time we post an entry, there has to be um, your debits and credits have to be equal. Okay. So financial statements. So financial statements are the end product of the accounting process. Information from the journal and the ledger are meaningless to most users unless they are summarized and communicated through the financial statements. No? So the major processes in accounting are summarized below. So we have to journalize our transactions, post it in the ledger, record, classifying, and then financial statements. That's your the part where we summarize and communicate information to the users. So for this session, we're going to talk about two financial statements. So number one, we have the statement of financial position, or your balance sheet. So again, it shows information on the assets, liabilities, and equity. And the other one is the statement of profit or loss, or your income statement. It shows information on income and expenses, and consequently the profit or loss for the period. Okay, now for the closing entries, what are the entries that we prepare, no? So number one, we have the accruals for income or expenses. And then prepayments initially recorded using the expense method. And finally, we have the advanced collections initially recorded using the income method. No? So later on, we'll have a sample problem to illustrate these closing entries to you. So reversing entries are entries usually made on the first day of the next accounting period to reverse certain adjusting entries made in the immediately preceding period. No? So why do we do that? No? So for example, we made the adjusting entries to close, say for example, October. Come November 1, we have to make sure that we reverse all those entries. Now in practice kasi, um, we have accounting systems that can automatically perform these reversing entries. No? So, especially in SAP, all you have to do is just tick some boxes there to indicate that these entries have to be reversed the following period. But obviously, we're still in the undergrad, no? So we need to make sure that we post all those reversing entries come the first day of the following month. So some adjusting entries that may be reversed. No? So all income accounts are debited and all expense accounts are credited. The resulting balance is recorded in the clearing account called the income summary. No? So again, um, the reason why um, we refer to the income statement as um, books of temporary accounts is because we're closing all these accounts at the end of the month. The balance of income summary is then close to the owner's capital account, which is obviously part of your balance sheet. And then any balance in the owner's drawing account is also close to the owner's capital account. Again, part of your balance sheet, no? Basically in the equity side. Now, in order for us to have a stronger understanding of this concept, no, let's apply it to a sample problem. No? So let me read the requirements first, and then we'll go back to the information presented. No? So what are the requirements? Number one, we have to provide the journal entries to post the entries to the ledger. So for discussion purposes, what we're going to do is we'll just prepare the accounts and then prepare the unadjusted trial balance, provide the adjusting entries, complete the worksheet up to the post-closing trial balance, and then we're going to prepare the closing entries. And then finally, we'll prepare the balance sheet and income statement. No? So basically, this is the culmination of what we have discussed earlier. No? So let's go back to the um, data. So entity A started operations in 2020 X1. The following were the transactions for the year ended December 31. So number one, the owner invested 200,000 cash to the business. No? So what we're going to do, class, is we'll just run through the the data first, and then later on, let's look at it side by side. No? Business obtained a 12% one-year bank loan of 300,000 on October 1, 20X1. Principal, principal and interest are due at maturity date. Purchase equipment on November 1 for 360,000 cash. Purchase office supplies worth 80,000 for cash. Entity A uses the asset method. Rendered services for 180,000 for cash. Worth 180,000 cash. Rendered services worth 420,000 on account. Collected 370,000 accounts receivable. Paid utilities for 16,000, salaries for 140,000. The owner withdrew 100,000 cash from the business. Then there are other information. No? Number one, the equipment has a useful life of 5 years. 6% with accounts receivable are doubtful of collection. Unused office supplies on December 31, 20X1 amounted to 5,000. Okay, so gawin nga natin class. Let's do this side by side. So Again, no, for discussion purposes, I'll be using Excel. But then in your case, you have to use your paper or your columnar notebook. No, so just make sure you post all these entries there. No, don't forget to write legibly. No, so that when so that in you'll be able to do the other process, no, without repeating the previous processes that you have completed, no. Kaya importante class na maayos yung pagsusulat. So, sige, isa-isay natin. Um, Number one, no? Ang sabi diyan, let's do the journal entries. Owner invested 200,000 cash to the business. So what are the entries? Debit cash, credit owner's equity or owner's capital for 200,000. Next, the business obtained a 12% one-year bank loan of 300,000. No? So we receive cash, so debit cash, and then credit notes payable to recognize. This is the initial recognition of the loan. Okay, so that's 300,000. So kaya tayo dyan. Number three, purchase equipment for 360,000. So debit equipment, credit cash, kasi we paid it in cash, no, for 360,000. Number four, purchase office supplies for 80,000. So the entry is either office supplies or prepaid supplies for 80,000. That's debit, and then credit cash for 80,000. Rendered services worth 180,000. So debit cash, credit service fees or service income, no, for 180,000. Six, rendered services worth 420,000 on account. So meaning, this is, we have to recognize accounts receivable. No? So debit accounts receivable, credit service fees or service income for 420,000. Next, paid utilities expense. So debit utilities expense, credit cash for 16,000. Paid salaries expense, so debit salaries expense, credit cash for 140,000. The owner withdrew 100,000 cash from the business. So debit owner's drawing and then credit cash for 100,000. Okay, so we have now satisfied the requirement A. Let's go to requirement B. Ano bang sabi ni requirement B? Lagay ko lang dito as we move. Dito lang siya. So kay requirement B, ang kailangan lang naman natin gawin is post the entries to the ledger. No? So again, for discussion purposes, what we're going to do is we'll just come up with the accounts. No? So we have cash, accounts receivable for the asset side, and office supplies and then equipment. Sa liabilities naman, we have the notes payable. Under equity, we have owner's equity, owner's drawings. And then income, we have the service fees and then the different expenses. No? So we have utilities and salaries. No? So ang gagawin natin, class, para mas madaling masundan, lagyan na lang natin ng footnote. No? So entry 1, cash and owner's equity. So may debit tayo na 200,000 dyan. So that's a 200,000 and credit owner's equity. So punta tayo sa equity. So that's a 200,000. Gawin pa natin sa number 2. Cash, debit cash of 300,000 and then credit notes payable. No? Notes payable under the liability side. Pahin tayo dyan. Next, equipment. So we have equipment debit and then credit cash for 360,000. So there. Next, office supplies, 80,000. Okay, debit. Oops. And then, credit cash of 80,000. So, tuloy lang natin yung step na yun, lahat. Number 5, debit cash of 180,000 there. And then, credit service fees. So punta tayo dun sa income. No? So, we have 180,000. Followed by accounts receivable of 420,000. So, debit. And then, That's 420,000. And then service fees again of 420,000. Okay na tayo sa number 6. Number 7, debit cash, 370,000. So nakakolect tayo. And then credit, 370,000 accounts receivable. Dahil nga nakakolect na tayo. Payment ng utilities, so debit utilities, 16,000. And then credit cash. Payment of salaries, we have salaries expense, 140,000. And then credit cash for 140,000. And then finally, owner's drawing. So dito siya sa equity ulit, debit 100,000 and then credit cash. In order for us to do requirement C, which is to prepare the unadjusted trial balance. So all we have to do first is get the sum. No? So it's 354,000. Paano nakuha yon? So we have a total debit of 1,050,000 less and 696,000. So we have a total of 354,000 debit. For accounts receivable, we have 50,000. No? So again, we're now going to prepare for the unadjusted trial balance. So we have cash, 354,000. So color code na lang natin. Na. Ito namang kulay na to. So dito natin nakuha yan. Next, accounts receivable of 50,000. So kung saan siyang side. No, so in this case kasi mas malaki yung debit natin. So 420 less 370. So remaining balance is 50,000 debit. Office supplies. So we have 80,000. Okay. Next, equipment. We have 360,000. Notes payable, 300,000. So it's a credit. Owner's equity. So we have 200,000. And then owner's drawing debit of 100,000. For service fees, so we have a credit of 600,000. Utilities, we have 16,000 debit. And then salaries, 140,000 debit. No? So just get the sum. The total would be 1,100,000. So okay na tayo sa requirement C. Lapit ko lang ulit tong given para at least side by side. Okay na tayo sa requirement C. Let's now go to requirement D, provide the adjusting entries. So remember class, earlier we recorded the initial recognition for the loan, no? So we received money from uh, money from the proceeds of our bank loan, no? So this is in relation to transaction number 2. So obviously, come December, syempre, we have to accrue for the interest expense, no? Kasi 'di ba, na-receive natin yung loan October 1. So October, November, December. Then we have to compute for the 3 months interest expense equivalent, no? And remember, the rate is 12%, but this is good for 1 year, no? So therefore, we have to get the equivalent for 3 months only, no? So how are we going to do that, no? So we have principal of 300,000, PRT pa rin, no? Principal multiplied by the rate multiplied by the term, no? So that's 300,000 multiplied by 12% multiplied by 3 months over 12, no? So we get 9,000. So debit interest expense of 9,000 and credit interest payable for 9,000. Ano pa yung another adjusting entry that we need to prepare? Depreciation expense, no? So in this case, transaction number 3. So we purchased equipment on November 1 for 360,000. Pansinin, the life of the asset, of the equipment is, the useful life is 5 years. No? So again, we purchased it in November, so we have to calculate the depreciation expense for 2 months. No? So November, tapos December. So that's 360,000 divided by divided by 12, multiply by 2/12. Ito class ha, don't forget to do this kasi nga, ang kinocompute lang natin for 20x1, year 20x1 is the depreciation for 2 months. Okay? So that's 12,000 debit to depreciation expense and the credit accumulated depreciation. And then finally, adjusting entry number 3, we have the bad debt expense. No? So again, sabi dito, 6% of accounts receivable are doubtful of collection. How much is the um, receivable balance natin? No? So let's look at the accounts receivable balance. Oops, natakpan na siya. So accounts receivable balance natin is 50,000. No? So sabi dyan, 6% daw of the total accounts receivable would be doubtful. No? So we have to recognize bad debt expense. No? So that's 50,000 multiplied by 6%. So we have 3,000 and then credit allowance for bad debts for 3,000 credit. Finally, on the supplies expense. No? Pansinin, initially, when we record the purchase of office supplies, sabi ng problem, entity A uses the asset method. No? So, upon purchase, pansinin natin, no? So, balikan natin tong journal entry natin. So, that's journal and transaction number 4. So, when we purchase supplies, we debit it to office supplies or prepaid supplies. No? So, gawin lang natin office supplies para at least iisa yung pinag-uusapan natin across. No? So, office supplies. So, kung ang debit mo was office supplies, at the end of the year, you have to adjust it. No? So, obviously, we have to recognize the expense. No? So, out of 80,000 office supplies, magkano dyan yung nagamit na? So, yung nagamit na portion, the used portion, you have to recognize it as expense. Meron bang other data? So sabi dyan, unused office supplies as at December 31 at year-end amounted to 5,000. So anong sinasabi nun? Out of the 80,000 initial purchase of office supplies, 75,000 pesos worth daw is has been used throughout the year. No? So therefore, we have to recognize the supplies expense. So debit supplies expense for 75,000 and credit office supplies for 75,000. So kaya mangyari niyan, when we prepare our adjusted trial balance, the office supplies account will have a balance of 5,000 pesos only, representing the unused portion. Okay, so that's letter D. Puntahan natin ngayon yung letter E. Complete the worksheet up to the closing, up to the post-closing trial balance. No? So, lipat ko to dito. Punta tayo sa next tab. Ayan, para lang nasusundan natin. Nandito na tayo class sa letter E. So, remember, when we discussed the worksheet earlier, we have provided there the different columns. No? So, ito, column for the accounts. No? So basically, these are just the accounts that we have used in preparing our journals, in posting to our ledgers, those the accounts that we have prepared. No? So we have to just post it here. No? So unadjusted trial balance, yan yung ginawa natin class kanina. Excuse me. So this portion, no? So we just have to transfer it here. And then next, we have adjustments. No? So these adjustments relate to the adjusting entries that we have completed. No? So we have interest expense 9,000 and then interest payable for 9,000. No? So we have interest expense here 9,000, interest payable 9,000. Again, these adjustment columns pertain to the adjusting entries that we have prepared earlier. Next, we have the adjusted trial balance. Again, class, the adjusted trial balance is just is just the sum of this uh, unadjusted trial balance and the adjustments column. So look at cash, for example, 354,000. Do we have any adjustments? Wala. So therefore, the balance would be 354,000. But look at office supplies. Ito. Office supplies natin initially, di ba, we purchased 80,000. So a debit of 80,000. But then, we have an adjusting entry for the used portion. So that's a credit of 75,000 to office supplies. Therefore, the remainder would be 5,000. So yun nga yan. No? Ito yung result ng dalawang items na to. Excuse me. Next, we have the balance sheet. Um, um, Again, for this portion, what's best to do is we'll look at item G first, no? And then item F so that we'll be able uh, to complete the rest of the worksheet. No? Puntahan muna natin si F and G. Kunin ko lang ulit tong data para at least nasusundan natin. Remember class, earlier, there are requirements to do closing entries. No? So sabi natin, all the accounts in the income statement, normally we call them temporary accounts or nominal accounts. We're closing them at the end of the year. No? So all the expenses, so di ba service fees or service revenue, the normal side is credit. In order for us to close this, we have to debit that to the income summary. Ito class compound entry na kasi yung ginawa natin dito. So, debit service fees and then all the expenses, we're crediting it. The net balance would be income summary account. No? So, basically what we're trying to do here is we're simply just closing all the P&L accounts to the income summary. Next, another closing entries that we prepare is for the uh, income, no? For the owner's equity, no? So again, this income summary account, um, from the income statement, when we close the nominal accounts from your profit and loss. So again, the revenue and expenses, we then now have to close this to the owner's equity. No? So kung nakikita mo yung flow, meron at this 345,000, basically this is your income. No? So your income is then close to the owner's equity account. So at the end of the day, it will all be in the balance sheet account. And then owner's drawing, we also have to close that, no? It is a debit initially, no? So we have to close it to the owner's equity account. So that's requirement F. So for requirement G, we can now prepare the balance sheet. No? So again, these are just result of all the entries that we have prepared earlier. No? So we have cash. If we're going to just go back um, to the worksheet, all we have to do is extend these numbers to the balance sheet. No? So we have 354,000 cash, accounts receivable of 50,000, office supplies of 5,000, 360,000 equipment. We have notes payable of 300,000, owner's equity of 200,000. And then if we're going to look at the closing entries, the next columns would be the post-closing trial balance. The post-closing trial balance, this include all those closing entries that we have prepared. So like for example, look at the owner's equity, diba? The owner's equity, initially we have 200,000 pesos credit. But then We close the owner's drawing, so that's a debit, and then we also close the revenue from our profit and loss, no? So that's 345,000. So that's 200,000 plus 345,000 less 100,000. So we get 445,000. So we just do the those steps, no, for the rest of the accounts for us to be able to complete this worksheet, no? So again, what I suggest you to do is you try it on your own and then just compare um, your answer to this file. Okay. So for the income statement, no, so we have service fees, and then we just listed all the expenses, no, based on our entries earlier. So utilities, salaries, interest, depreciation, bad debt, and then we have the supplies expense, no? So profit for the period would be 345,000. Remember class, this budget expense, this is 6% of 50,000. No? So kasi nga, sabi dyan, 6% represent uh, doubtful of 6% with accounts receivable are doubtful of collection. Okay, so that's the accounting cycle for a service business. So let me just go back to the slides. Yeah, so that's it, no? So again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email or course it through your class Beadle, no? So that's all for now. Again, stay safe and stay healthy, and see you again next session. Ingat kay class.